Hi, YouTube. Just joking. But yes, speaking of YouTube, if you have anyone that wants to see it after the fact, we have a repository of all of our Eco Lunch and Learns on our YouTube page, the Bermuda College YouTube page. So they're great, all kinds of topics that have been going on for 7 years now.
Yeah, we don't have the full 7 years.
That's true. That's true. We don't have to go up to 7 years. It started in COVID.
4 or 5.
Yeah. But anyways, they're there.
Information.
Yep. So welcome. This, as we said, is our 7th series. We really appreciate you coming and supporting. Today's topic, waste management in Bermuda, is a very dear one to me because waste has always been my baby. Once I was called Trash Girl, which I'm not sure if was a compliment or an insult. But anyways, not about me. We're about Mark Hudson today, who has come to Bermuda to help us manage our waste system. And we have a very comprehensive waste program in Bermuda that covers recycling, hazardous waste, composting, amongst other things. And he will hopefully shed some light on some of the things going on that are new and improvements, and answer our questions afterwards. So welcome, Mark. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
So thank you, Trash Girl. I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about waste management. As the slide says, my name is Mark, and I'm the Solid Waste Manager for the Solid Waste Management section in the government. And you can tell from my accent that I'm not actually Bermudan. I'm actually from Manchester in the UK. And I was working there for over 20 years in a local government setting. I've been here now for just over 18 months. So slowly but surely starting to lose my Bermudan green home tag. So, waste management. If I had £1 for all the eyes I've ever seen glaze over when I say that I work in waste management, I'd be a very rich man. I'd definitely be retired by now. I'd have probably played pickleball this morning. This time after lunch, I'd probably be a little bit drunk. But is waste management really that boring? And does it really deserve to be spoken about such an prestigious occasion such as this, in front of such an esteemed audience such as yourselves? Well, I'd argue yes. And what I've always found amazing about here and in the UK is that when you scratch the surface of waste management, the passion and the emotion in people really start to get going. I'd like to give you some examples of that. If you swap the words waste management with waste collections, you really start to see a switch in people. Instead of being bored, people really now want to have a chat. My bin men are great. My bin men are terrible. Where does all that waste go? How much waste do we actually produce every year? Why don't we recycle? How big of a problem is waste in Bermuda? The same happens when you swap the term waste management with recycling. I've always been pleasantly surprised about how passionate people are when you talk about recycling. And that's true in Bermuda here too. People are always asking, what actually happens to all that tins, aluminium and glass? Do we really recycle it all? I've even been asked, is it actually a scam? I still can't believe that. There's still people in Bermuda that think that the whole recycling program is a scam. And is it actually working? But a lot of people want to know that as well. In fact, people get that passionate about recycling that if I'm in any occasion where there's alcohol involved, I won't mention the R word, because people get that passionate. I get like hour-long probing questions about what we're doing with it and stuff like that. Then we've got the swapping the word waste management with the words Times Bay or the public drop-off. And again, the questions start. Why can't we tip this? Why can't we tip that? How much waste are we actually producing? How wasteful are we as a community? And is it like this everywhere? If you swap the words waste management with illegal dumping, I see people get very angry very quickly. Rightly so. Illegal dumping is a scourge, and the Bermudan people that I speak to would like to see the people responsible getting punished properly. But finally, if you really want to truly upset a Bermudan, swap the term waste management with pollution and be prepared not to get drilled on local measures, but global waste management issues. And here people want to know, where does all this waste come from? How much is actually out there? And how can this be allowed to happen? So waste, boiling it down, I don't think waste management is a boring subject. The number and types of conversations I'm having, I don't think many of you do too. So why is waste management got such a bad reputation, such a boring reputation? I think that that's really got to do with the word waste. The issue that I've got with the word waste is it usually depicts an unwanted or unusable material, that something's useless or defective or of no use. And it's got a poor perception in terms of an end product or process. We usually associate the words rubbish and trash with those types of things. I don't think the word waste is actually accurate. So little of the waste we actually create is actually waste. And I'd like to give you a few examples of that. So going back to our waste collections, usually the first thing people think of when you say waste management is their weekly waste management collection. But is the waste that we actually collect as waste collections actually waste? Is it actually waste? Because I'd argue that that's being taken to the incinerator at Tynes Bay, so you could argue that that's actually fuel. All the waste that goes down to Marsh Folly, is this waste? Well, I'd argue that this is actually compost. And the stuff again at the recycling centre, the tag recycling that we collect, is this waste? Well, I'd argue that the glass that we collect on the island and use in drainage applications is an excellent example of reuse. And I'd also argue that the tins and the aluminium that we collect and we bale and export to the US is actually a great example of reuse and recycling. So to recap, I'm going to do a few of these today just so that we're clear, or I'm clear, as to where we're up to. Waste management isn't actually boring. I'm hoping we're establishing that. It's actually something that many of us are very interested in and quite passionate about. And the term waste is a little bit naff. It doesn't properly describe the activity and the processes that we actually undertake. Okay, solid waste management. I'd like to have a little touch about where that actually sits in government for those that don't know. So as you know, the government is split into many ministries like education and health. Solid waste management actually sits in the Ministry of Public Works. And within the Ministry of Public Works, there's a number of departments, one of those departments being the Department of Works and Engineering. And there's 7 major sections within that department. What you've got is solid waste management in Tynes Bay, which obviously speak for themselves. But then you've got the water section, which provides all the piped water and sewage systems on the island. You've got the electrical section, which manages all the major electrical installation projects, such as the lights at the National Stadium or the tennis stadium, or the new EV charging point infrastructure, which is coming onto the island. You've got highways, obviously, which deals with stuff like potholes and road repairs, resurfacing and wall repairs. And you've got the mechanical section, which maintains, service and repair all the government's vehicles and equipment. But last and not least, you've also got structures in there, which deal with all the island's major infrastructure. And a good example of that would be stuff like bridges. So we sit in there, and as you can see, it's a very operational department. It's got all of our frontline operational services in there. Okay, so before I just talk about what solid waste management is and what it does, I'd just like to take a minute just to discuss how waste is generated in Bermuda. So every time I see this picture, it blows my mind a little bit to imagine that on this tiny strip of land, what actually goes on here. Not only have you got all of the government infrastructure that I've just mentioned, but you've got stuff like airports and power stations and churches and hospitals, medical facilities and major docks, hotels, sports stadiums, golf courses, prisons, schools, and of course colleges. It's a testament to the ingenuity of the Bermudan people that they have in many respects built themselves a first world country. But with being a first world country carries the burden of first world waste management issues, and that's what we're definitely dealing with from a solid waste management perspective. Gone are the days when individual parishes could collect and burn their own rubbish within their own parishes. Those days have not sadly gone. Those days have gone. And that position is compounded when you look at Bermuda's location. 700 miles from the nearest coastline in the US means that it would not be financially viable, morally right, or legally permitted for us here in Bermuda to be able to export or transport our wastes to other countries, which is quite right. So what is the solution, and how do we manage all the waste being generated every day from the thousands of domestic properties and hundreds of businesses on the island? Well, the answer to that question is quite simple. The government decided to build itself a waste to energy plant. What I would say about that is you might not like the thought of burning waste, but given Bermuda's position, I don't think there's much more choice. Tynes Bay removes so many of the waste management issues that will quickly become a financial, environmental or public health risk. This is especially true around waste which rots or attracts vermin, such as food waste. So as well as protecting the island from many of its risks, Tynes Bay also provides a number of benefits to the island. It provides jobs, from waste collections and equipment operatives to mechanical and electrical engineers. The facility employs a number of people in various roles. It also provides opportunities. The facility in the past has provided a number of jobs in various roles, including apprenticeships and traineeships, and is a good foothold for the young engineers on the island. The Tynes Bay facility also produces electricity, which is fed onto the national grid, and it directly powers some government infrastructure, like the water plant on North Shore Road. So the Bermudan approach to waste is really quite simple. If it's burnable, it's going to Tynes Bay. If it's not burnable, it falls under the remit of the solid waste management section. So solid waste management, what's it saying? Well, that is to protect the people of Bermuda with cost-effective waste management services that protect public health and safeguard the environment. That's taken from our waste management plan. We do actually have one, I have to say. Solid waste management itself, what does that actually constitute and what does it consist of? Well, there's 5 key services that we're actually managing. The first one is the waste collection service that I've mentioned. We've got the materials recovery facility, which is based up at the quarry, which is where all the tag material goes. We've got a specialist waste section, which deals with all of our hazardous waste. We've got the airport waste facility, and then we've got the Marsh Valley composting facility as well. I'd just like to take a minute just to kind of talk through each of these sections. So the first one is waste collections. That deals with all the household waste on the island, and that's coming from approximately 35,000 properties. It supplies a weekly bag waste collection service, like I'm sure you all very well know. And we're dealing with about 12 specialist vehicles with 42 members of staff, which are a mixture of operatives and managers. In 23-24, as the slide says there, we collected over 16,500 tonnes. And like I've explained, that waste goes to the Tynes Bay facility where it's burnt for fuel. Just wanted to give you a little bit of insight as to the major projects that we're dealing with within this section at the moment. The first one is the move to GIS. All of our current systems, like many government systems, are paper-based. And what the intention is to move all of this now onto a GIS system, which will help us to better manage this service going forward. The hope is that what we can do is, once it's onto computers, to start to interrogate what we do and how we do it, and understand whether we can put logistical efficiency behind what it is that we're actually doing. The second thing is to have a look at the collection options that are available to us as well. So what we have at the moment is a bag collection service, which is a very honest system. And whilst it's not perfect, it is safe, it is reliable, and it allows us to police waste quite effectively. What I mean by that is when the gentlemen themselves are actually collecting the waste, they can actually see what they're actually throwing onto the vehicle. Probably one of the biggest questions I've been asked since I've been here, though, is what's the opportunity and what's the potential for us all to have bins? And I think that's because when we go around the world, we get to see a lot of countries that have quite sophisticated bin collection systems. From where I'm from in the UK, you know, everybody had 4 bins. They had one for general rubbish, one for food and garden, glass cans and plastic bottles, and paper and cardboard. And people see this and they wonder if that sort of thing could be done in Bermuda. And while I'm not sat here promising, stood here promising anything, those options are being considered. But I would like to point out that being here in Bermuda and obviously with the location issue, something like that would cost millions and millions of pounds. So we just need to take a really structured look at it. But rest assured that it is something that we are working towards understanding a little bit more. Moving on to the MRF then and the recycling at the quarry. So that processes all the tag material that we've been talking about. There's 6 staff work down there. And in 23-24, we pulled in probably about 1,500 tonnes of material at that facility. And we do secondary recycling down there. By that I mean we do recycle things like air conditioners, and we're trying to establish and develop an e-waste collection services and export that back out to the US. So key projects and considerations at this time at the MRF. The MRF is now approaching 20 years old. So we've got quite a lot of work to be doing to refurbish and replace a lot of the mechanical and electrical systems there. And with regards to recycling, we know we can definitely do better as well. We believe that we're probably capturing about 30% of the material which is actually out there. And like with bins, what we're actually looking at now is how we can improve this service for residents. And this definitely includes looking at the blue bag collection system that we've got in place at the moment, and the potential to use maybe a reusable recycling container such as a bag or a box instead, because we believe that this would improve participation and the amount of recycling that we're actually collecting. Specialist waste down at Sallyport, we collect a wide variety of hazardous wastes from there. We've got 5 staff, probably do about 650 tonnes a year, and the mass majority of that is exported to the US under a specialist waste contract. So when we're talking about specialist waste, we're talking about stuff like CFC gases, we're talking about engine oils, household batteries, paints, acids, asbestos, and pesticides. Everything that would literally be very harmful going through the Tynes Bay process, being burnt and then being released back into the atmosphere. Key projects here include projects to look at electrical and battery wastes. A good example of that is a better solution for the lithium and the electric vehicle batteries that we're increasingly receiving. We don't currently have a very suitable disposal method for those batteries. And so the intention going forward would be to try and put better infrastructure and better collection and segregation processes in place so that we can deal with those in a more effective manner. The airport waste facility, a great concern to a number of Bermudans. This is the second biggest conversation that I have on the island when we start talking about solid waste management, and that's what is going on at the airport waste facility, because people are genuinely very worried about what's going on there. And I think that the main reason for that is because a lot of the material over the last decades has been going into the water, and that is obviously not ideal. It's badged under the term land reclamation, but I would also argue from a waste perspective, you could also say it's landfilling into the sea. It's not something I personally like to see, and so a great deal of work is kind of going on there. It's an incredibly busy site though, and that's the pressure that we have from a solid waste management perspective. If you see all the vehicles that are running in there, it's just like a constant stream of vehicles. We're dealing with 120 vehicles a day. And so, that is probably our biggest pressure when we're talking about trying to find solutions, is trying to find solutions whilst also receiving all of this material. There's 4 staff up there, and we're saying that we collected about 15,000 tonnes in 23-24. So the major projects and considerations for us up there at this moment in time is, to obviously look about how we actually receive this material on site, how we can segregate it, and then put in the proper recycling activities behind those. Key ones that we're actively working on very hard at the moment include scrap metal, include end-of-life vehicles, include tyres, and what the intention is to hopefully put better programmes in place for those materials. Because when you look at what's coming in, those are the priority ones based on the amount and the tonnages that we're actually receiving at this time. And you've got the composting, very similar to the airport. An incredibly busy site. You probably see when you drive up and down the roads how many vehicles have got vegetation on them, packed to the rafters with vegetation. And again, we're getting about 120 of those vehicles a day which are coming through. We do receive all compostable wastes there, and we've got about 10 staff. And as you can see there, it's our highest yielding facility as well. We took in there a whopping 25,500 tonnes in 23-24. So the key consideration, the key project that we've got for this from a solid waste management perspective is trying to balance the inputs and the outputs. And what I mean by that is we can receive 25,500 tonnes in a year. We don't have the facilities or the processes at this moment in time to match that with outgoing materials. So as you've probably seen, Bermudans amongst you, the site at Marsh Valley has increased in height over the years, and that's because what we've got is too much material coming in and not enough material going out. So what we're looking at now is active long-term solutions that we can actually increase the amount of material which is outgoing. Two key factors that we've got for that are producing a better compost. And what I mean by that is that we're hoping that we can improve the material which is coming into the facility. As a vegetation material only, bringing in that type of material is pretty low. I'm not a compost expert, so I couldn't tell you all the scientific terms, but the nitrogens and in the soil to make decent compost material that can be used from an agricultural or horticultural perspective, it's lacking a lot of stuff. And so we need to understand what it's lacking in and what we need to mix in with it to make it better. And we're having those conversations now and trying to understand that. I'm just currently understanding as well if we can put a study together to send off all of this material so that we can get it sampled and compare it back up against other composts that are on the island, that stuff that you see outside Gorham's. You know, what's the difference between that stuff outside Gorham's and the stuff that we've got? We need to understand that difference, and hopefully that we can then start, like I say, to provide it for a better agricultural and horticultural use. And the second thing that we've got as well is hog fuel, and that is basically providing it as a fuel for the incinerator. Now, we receive lots of compostable waste. We receive trees, we receive all sorts during the hurricane season. And can we be chipping down and can we be processing that for a fuel, which is, again, going back through Tynes Bay and could be used as a burning, and again, to provide some electricity or create a benefit. Okay, so recap, where are we? Waste management isn't actually boring. The word waste is a little bit naff. Tynes Bay is the foundation of Bermuda's waste management approach. Solid waste management service are basically providing the supporting act. Okay, solid waste management. How do we assess our current position? So one way is to use the SWOT analysis tool. That's to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats that we face as a solid waste management section. SWOT is a great tool and can literally be applied to anything. But just a warning that if you decide to apply it to your life, from experiences, the weaknesses list can be a little bit depressing. Okay, strengths. You wouldn't believe the trouble that I had shooting this shot this morning coming out of the shop. But strengths. Okay, so solid waste management. We're doing okay. I'm not going to lie to you and say that everything's perfect. We can't improve our performance because we can. And I'm not going to pretend that we've not got a lot of work to do because we do. But what I can say is that we're doing okay. And we know what we're good at and we know what we're bad at. And I think that's a good base from which to start. Best practice. I think the thing about best practice is waste management isn't rocket science. And there are a load of great examples from around the world of waste management technologies and facilities and equipment. So we're not looking to reinvent any wheels here in Bermuda. But what we are looking to do is just find the best fit of stuff which is happening around the world and bring it back here. And then the last one, environmentalism. I think it's fair to say that there's a growing environmental conscientiousness growing around the topic of the environment. It's no longer acceptable to do what it was that we used to do. And I think people quite rightly expect more when it comes to the protection of the natural environment. And this is going to be a great driver for change. Weaknesses, size and location, I've touched on it. Bermuda's size means that it does lack significant waste management infrastructure. So we're going to have to continue to export or be creative. And Bermuda's location, like I was saying before, 700 miles off the nearest coastline, means that we're going to have to, when it comes to recycling options, they're going to be very difficult to implement. Second weakness I believe that we've got is legislation. If you look at our current waste management legislation, it comes from the Waste and Litter Control Act in 1987. And I think this needs to be really brought up to date and either replaced or, like I'm saying, it needs modernising. And a lot more waste management responsibilities and obligations need put in within that legislation. A good example of that, and something that I would be very keen to see, would be duty of care. It's something which comes across in a lot of the US and UK legislation, and what that's doing is it's pushing a lot of the responsibility back onto the generator, so that if you're the generator of waste, you've got ultimate responsibility to that waste until it is safely and securely disposed of or recycled. And that's something that I think is a key bit for any future legislation which comes through here. And then, long-term strategy, that last one on the bottom there. We do need a long-term strategy for waste management, and what that would hopefully do is bring together any new plans that we had for collections and recycling, the airport and composting under one umbrella. And then I think with a clear direction and everything under one umbrella, it would allow us to start having better conversations about investment in terms of staff and processes and technologies and equipment and new stuff going forward. If we had that better strategy in place. All right, clicked a little bit quickly. Opportunity, scope to do more. So our approach to waste, as I've admitted, isn't perfect and it can be improved. But that does mean that there are a lot of options available to us going forward, and that's quite an exciting place to be, or it's an exciting place for the waste management geeks, I should say. We've got on-island solutions, so new future approaches to waste management could open the door to more on-island solutions. And what I mean by that is potentially new business and specialist niche business, which is to do with waste management. Is there a business that could set up on the island that could help us with electrical waste, with battery wastes, with the lithium battery issue that we're getting, cooking oil, food waste? These things have the potential to be niche businesses on the island, and hopefully from niche businesses setting up, what you would be doing is creating jobs. On to threats then. Solid waste management is a government section, and so we are impacted by the government's fortunes, and that includes financially. I think COVID was a great example. From what I've told, COVID had a real detrimental impact on the island, and with impacts such as that, it reduces the government's income, and then obviously it reduces budgets for government sections. So that is a threat for us going forward. We are, like with external factors, we're not in complete control of our own destiny. And examples of external factors that we could be dealing with are increases in fuel costs, new legislation from the US which stops us importing maybe what we're importing now, especially around hazardous wastes, and shipping costs, but also things like political. We've just had an election recently. If that had been a change of party, what would their view of waste management have been? So again, solid waste management as a section can gear up and have its own kind of thoughts and ideas, but we share those with senior management and politicians. And the evolution of waste, so new technologies, goods and services, they are coming online all the time. A good example of that again being lithium batteries and electric vehicles. And it's difficult for a government section which is slow and cumbersome, a bit like an oil tanker trying to turn around, trying to keep pace with the modern world. All right, recap. Waste management isn't boring. The word waste is a bit naff. Science-based, the foundation of the Bermuda waste management approach. Solid waste management services are the supporting act. Solid waste management doing okay, but could do better. All right, so getting towards the end of the presentation now. So why am I here? And I believe the first reason is because solid waste management owes you a duty. As a government section, solid waste management have a duty to the people of Bermuda to manage its responsibilities to the highest possible standards. And that means providing appropriate messaging and communication to educate the public and hopefully provide a degree of comfort that we are actually competent. And considering the right things. We are here because of you. Please remember that solid waste management only exists because you generate waste. Solid waste management essentially produces retrospective services. And what I mean by that is that we react to Bermudan people's needs, wants and desires. your weekly trash, your unwanted clothes, shoes, cars, bikes, TVs, cell phones become a government problem the minute that you decide that you're going to dispose of them. So please remember this before you want to complain or be critical about your solid waste management services. I'd also ask that you please remember this when you take and hopefully take a responsibility for the waste that you're actually producing. One of the tools that we use a lot in waste management is the waste management hierarchy. And I'm sure many of you have seen this before. But what it is a step-by-step guide to actually dealing with, or better processes for dealing with waste. The first one is to have a buy less mindset. And do we actually need the stuff that you want to buy? A good example of this is clothes and shoes. We buy stuff like this just to make ourselves feel better. I mean, you know, I don't know the psychological reasoning behind all of that, but it seems a bit daft when you think about it. But do we actually need this stuff? The second one is to swap the way you shop. It's trying to encourage people to buy second hand. I think a good example of this is brand new vehicles, bikes and cars. Do you need a brand new one? Or could we allow ourselves to, you know, our egos to reduce a little bit and even consider second hand stuff? We've got use it again. Could you not just continue to use the old one? An example of this, and one that really rattles my cage, is a new one that came from the UK, which allows people with cell phones to renew or get a new cell phone every single year. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, what is that all about? You know, somebody not just like keep a cell phone for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 instead of having it replaced every year, especially when you consider what goes into making an iPhone or well, any mobile phone these days. Then you've got stuff like rehome it. Can you find the time and the energy to try and find a second home for something? If you're getting rid of something, have you just got that little bit of extra impetus just to try and ask a friend or a relative or to take it to a charity shop? Then we've got the last couple, which is recycling, which is obvious. And then I think the bin it one as well is obviously the last option once everything else has been considered. So why am I here? And the last one that I would say is I shouldn't really be here. And stood here today really should be Bermuda. You shouldn't need some smelly Mancunian coming over here and taking up one of your government jobs. The government has plenty of opportunities for those with the desire to work in the public sector, from full part-time work to apprenticeships and traineeships. And if not in waste, there are plenty of other ministries in government. The government needs help and good people to tackle the issues that it's dealing with. So all I'd say and what all I'm promoting is that people keep their eye on the government careers job board, because looking at more of the youth in here today, you know, that's a good avenue for people to just to keep an eye on the potential jobs that are coming across. Final recap, and I'll leave you alone. I won't go through those, but the last two. Solid waste management accepts its responsibility, but we do need your help. And waste management is a two-way street. And what I mean by that is that solid waste management has its responsibilities in providing those services and activities, but you have yours in terms of the way that you generate and how you dispose of your wastes. And what I would say as well is this is solid waste management. That's our website. I think that our email address is waste@gov.bm. Yeah. And so we'd be interested to know, you know, solid waste management, it doesn't exist or operate in a vacuum. We'd be interested to know if you love us or you hate us. Either one, just tell us why. If you agree or disagree with anything that you've heard today, let us know. If you'd like more information or a conversation or a discussion, again, please let us know. If you have any thoughts or ideas, if you want to confirm anything that you've heard on the grapevine, this is becoming more and more. I've had a couple of conversations already today about stuff which people believe's happening or have heard of happening. So if you ever want to kind of just clarify something that you've heard before, there's a great deal of misinformation that goes on there. I don't think social media helps at all. But again, if you've heard something like the fire at the airport last December was caused by this, that, and the other, or, you know, we're here to kind of provide a little bit of truth and a little bit of quality behind some of the messaging that you might be hearing. And yeah, I'd encourage you to get in touch with us. Okay, I think that's me. I think I've said my piece. I'll open it up for questions or comments. I've just got one. Suresh. Which is, please, no hard ones.
Comments. Firstly, I'd like to say that was a great coverage of all of the waste management. I deal, I work in the labs and I deal with the hazardous waste, and the guys that come to pick it up have been excellent. When you call them, they come right away. If they can't come, they'll call me and say, we're short-staffed.
Okay.
One of the other comments is that, and I heard this from someone else, it's not me, that Bermuda is
a trash girl.
No, but they said that Bermuda is a first world country with a third world mentality. And that happens a lot around environmental stuff, issues particularly. Because you'll get people in this room who are very environmentally conscious, and you'll get people, you're riding home behind a car or whatever, and they're out the window without a thought. So that's, and I think that is a behavioral issue, and that's where we have problems on a grand scale with a lot of our environmental issues, because you have to change the mindset, and that's a lot harder to do than, let's say, putting up solar panels and saying, yes, I've done my bit to save the environment. And the last comment I'll make was about your composting. I use that compost a lot, and there was someone that said there's no nutrients in it, and their suggestion was take your kitchen scraps and put them in and use it like that. So I think what you were saying is a valid point, because I do use it, but it's more or less filler, because it doesn't have any nutrients to the actual plants.
That's a good point. I think that on the last one, I think the key question that we've got, the key process that we need to get sorted out is what we do with all of that compost material and what we do with food waste. I was already talking to a couple of people before here about food waste and what the best thing to do with it. And I don't think we know. But I think one of the key things that we need to do, and I think what the outcome will be, is that we need to find a number of solutions, given the amount of material that are coming in. I think some of it's got to be hog waste, some of it's got to be agricultural, I think some of it's got to be horticultural, I think some of it's got to be, but we need to find out, and we need to really research what we're doing with it all. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, sorry, there was one other thing with regards to EVs and all of this new technology. We had a discussion about solar panel farm on the ocean, right? And my thing was, like, now some of the earlier solar panels are now coming offline. What are we doing with those? And I asked when they were talking about windmills, what do you call it? Wind turbines? They were saying, we're looking at wind turbines for Bermuda and on the ocean type thing. And I was thinking, well, if that's the case, you need to build in from the start how you dispose of them at the end, because I think that link is missing too. And that goes to the point too, we used to be able to go to at the airport. People would love to go there and remove parts for their car and stuff. Well, it becomes, yes, a legality issue, but at the same time, there were people that were recycling. So maybe there's a way to fit that in somewhere, like you do the compost. You don't have access to all of the whole facility, but you have a little part that you could put something out that people can salvage.
To provide you with a little bit of comfort, it's happening now with the electric battery stuff. So the Department of Transport are looking at new policy to introduce electric vehicles going forward. They're trying to line up when they're going to say that it has to be all this by this year. But the same people that are consulting on how that process is going are also now helping us to understand what the disposal side of that is actually looking at. So whereas we might have missed a trick solar panel wise, I think with electric vehicles, I think we're in a lot better position in terms of having those conversations. And the conversations is that having about specialist waste is that's where that type of processes will be, because it is a kind of hazardous specialist waste stuff. So hopefully that we are a bit better linked up there.
Sorry, just to piggyback on the EV conversation, are you also linking up with the structures and having the infrastructure in place so that people be interested in buying? Because I know, for example, you mentioned National Stadium, they really missed an opportunity with that new parking lot and rooftop that could have been, solarized and plugged out there. Like,
It's not actually under our remit.
so I know, but I'm just like, are you communicating with those departments? Because wasn't that in Westfield?
You mean from the battery packs coming out from the back end of them?
No, but just also like if you have the infrastructure, people buy EVs, like, you know what I mean? But like I know you're disposing of them or recycling them or upcycling them or whatever you're gonna do.
We made it for a secondary purpose.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna buy an EV if there's nowhere to plug it in. Like, you know what I mean?
Your hat.
Yes. I live in a condo. But you know what I mean about you have mentioned like linking up with transport. But are you talking to structures about the infrastructure and how that all aligns to people actually
No.
go down that route? Do you know what I mean?
I think transport.
It should be a holistic.
They're hard ones.
Am I being dumb here?
No. I get what you're saying. I think we've got there's 1,000 conversations to have with 1,000 different people because waste management is basically the end of every single process on the island. With every single industry.
Yeah.
I think just gearing up all of those conversations is what we'd love to do.
Yeah.
Maybe not as developed as the one that you're talking about at this moment in time. We're still trying to get our compost right.
Sorry, I didn't think it was hard.
Thanks, Mark. That's a great overview. Really appreciate that. I did have to smile at the aerial photo, which was probably taken in 1984 because of the incredibly small footprint of the waste management site there. But my question is, do you have the opportunity to engage at a professional level with other waste managers in North America? Because that's kind of where we are, to see what they're doing and what they're looking at in terms of future waste. You've mentioned it's difficult to think about battery recycling, but that has to change because it's not going to work if we can't.
Yeah.
So do you get those opportunities to interact with others to really see what's on the horizon, where if we got organized, found some resources, maybe that comes by putting in the recycling cost up front when you purchase something like that new phone, the price there to help solve that problem. So do you have a sense that we have opportunities going forward?
I do. I think we're well connected, and we're well connected through people like our specialist waste agent. So our specialist waste agent is a company called Public, who are a massive waste management company in America. They deal with a load of government contracts and stuff like that. So if the government's looking to dispose of anything a bit ropey, it's Republic that they usually go to. And what that allows us to do, just as an example, is if we're talking about batteries or we're talking about expertise, they actually employ those types of people and legal people and environmental people. Because they're such a big company, we do have the ability to kind of use that. I've got some, we're working with some great companies at the moment, the Rocky Mountain Institute. I don't know if you've heard of them. Those are the people that we're linking with.
Ben works for them.
Yeah. Right, okay. So we talk to people like that. We've obviously got links back into the UK through myself. So yeah, I'm hopeful. But again, we need to have 1,000 conversations with 1,000 different people.
I saw your numbers just previously, and I was just wondering, did you do a waste audit very, very recently? And if so, where could I find that?
Last one we did was about 2017. Venice's desperate to do another one.
We were just talking about it. In May, we'll do it in May, yeah?
So Venice is already telling me that we need to do another one. So I think we'll be doing one 2025. So the last stuff that we did was
Are you volunteering?
Yeah.
Awesome, good.
Yeah, my question is, it seems like over time, we think we're evolving, we're making improvements and changes. But I'm old enough to remember when we had incinerators, which was a 55-gallon crude oil drum in our backyard.
Yeah.
And we burned our trash.
Mhm.
But now it's centralized. And there was a reason why we went in that direction. You know, you don't want to be letting off emissions into your neighbor's space and their clothes on their line when the wind's blowing in their direction. Right? But Velco, now you have emissions coming out not only are they going in that area, they're going over the whole island. So I just ponder how we change the way we do things, but is it really improving anything?
It's a good question. Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you, for instance, that same era in which we burn trash in incinerators in our backyards was an era in which our mothers had diapers, but they weren't Depends or whatever other name they called. They were cloth diapers.
Yeah, disposable.
And they took the waste and put it in the toilet. And they took the diaper and put it in the wash cycle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So what I'm saying is the more things change, it seems more they stay the same. Are there any statistics to show, are we creating more waste now than we did 10, 15, 20 years ago? And if, in what areas, and how can we address those areas where we're creating more waste than we used to?
I think it's a really good point, and it's very difficult to get really accurate statistics to kind of back up what you're talking about. What you're talking about is really, really in-depth science. But what I think, where I'd probably go and probably try to answer that is that what we've got is the requirement to deal with waste today. So as we're sitting here now, there's hundreds of tons, thousands of tons worth of waste being produced. We probably had about 30 vehicles enter the airport. We had 30 vehicles enter at Marsh Folly. So I think what we've got is a twofold problem: is trying to work out where we go and what we do for the best, and trying to work out whether that is actually better than what we've done before, whilst dealing with the current issue. And that's where I think we're more probably currently focused, which is how do we deal with all of this waste which is being generated right now. So again, but you're right, you have got to ponder these things and these statistics.
I have one final comment and questions, which had to do with my pet peeve is irresponsible dog owners. That's my pet peeve.
Right.
Because I see it on the railway trails, and I'm wondering if the government is going to implement any CCTV cameras where we can have better management, you might say, of identifying the owners, not the dogs, but the owners.
I have to be honest, it's not on my agenda at all. Anything to do with dog fouling, to be honest with you. I think it'll probably end up in Parks' remit, to be honest, as well. So, but yeah, I'm sure it's.
Chris has, sorry, so he was up for ages.
Oh, thanks, Amy. Mark, thank you so much for the presentation.
No hard ones.
No, this is an easy question. Thanks for the presentation, and you mentioned about Marsh Folly and maybe consulting with somebody about improving the quality of the compost output.
Yes.
Would you be able to name who that organization is or person?
We're having that conversation with a lot of people. We've just got in touch with, Dana just got in touch with us this morning to ask if we'd meet with, they just had an agricultural meeting with some farmers, and they were kind of talking about, potential.
Yeah, Mark, Chris is a farmer, actually. It's Christopher, yeah? He's a
Tell him,
farmer.
Chris, tell him what you do.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot.
Thanks, guys. I have a business called the AgriLibid Institute, and we teach sustainable gardening education.
Oh, we need to have a conversation after here, then, don't we?
No, I mean, that's something that we would.
Come be part of that, please, Chris.
Like,
We're opening this conversation up to everybody. We want to take everybody that's got more knowledge and experience of dealing with this type of material, because my knowledge is poor, so I need educating on it, and I need people with better expertise than me to tell me what the best way forward is. So if that's you, then we can have a conversation about it.
Mellow.
Oh, hi. Batteries.
Yes.
I mean, how many batteries do we buy? Whether AAA, AA car batteries, but batteries can be rejuvenated, right? You make batteries, like whatever it is dead, you can put it in boiling water with salt, and you can test it, and it'll recharge itself.
Should be setting yourself up a specialist waste business, shouldn't you?
And I'm just saying, because
Sounds like a good idea.
recycling all the batteries, but you could reuse them again.
Yeah.
You never have to buy another battery again.
I think the problem that we've got as a government is money, resources, time, and expertise. And I think that we're dealing with really fundamental materials, scrap metals, compost, waste that's coming in from the collections. I think when we start talking about stuff like that, it's getting really, really niche. And that's what I'm saying. I think that those types of businesses and those types of approaches, we need the government should be trying to encourage and support those types of things. But I don't think the government themselves should be actually doing those services.
Right, when you're done, it's fine.
Yeah, so again, really specialist, really niche in terms of what that application is, in and amongst all the other priorities that we've got. And our priorities are based on tonnages. And our first one, as you could see from the slides, is 25,500 tons of compostable material and getting that sorted out. When we come down to batteries and household batteries, we're probably talking maybe 2-3 tons a year. And again, there's 1,000 different things that can be done with waste. You mentioned in one, but I think it's again us having the ability to sort out our backyard out properly in terms of the bigger priorities. Hopefully, people like yourselves with brilliant ideas can come to us with those and set them up privately. Would be my thought.
I'm retired, but I was always involved in helping to teach asbestos. I was involved in recycling, asbestos and teaching people how to do it correctly from US, the OSHA, and EPA.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Along the lines of Chris, my partner's an arborist as well. And so I was going to ask if we do have thoughts, suggestions, questions. Would we send them to Venice or to you?
Yeah, Venice, if you know Venice, Venice is going to be front and centre when we talk about these types of things. So if you know and already have a relationship, please reach out to Venice.
All right. And then is Sallyport under Works and Engineering then, or is it under BLMC?
So
it's he or she.
Wetco.
You was Wetco, now BLMC.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's just recently changed, hasn't it? So it is under Public Works and Engineering, Solid Waste Management, but it's obviously located under at that facility because it's been there for years and years and years. Should it be there? Should it not be there? All conversations that will probably happen in the future.
So who's currently managing it?
Solid Waste Management.
You got it. Okay, good to know. All right, thank you. Because I've been sending everything her way, so I'll follow up with you. And then I don't know if anybody's here from Green Rock. Green Rock used to have like a business green audit. Does Works and Engineering, or is there a national green audit in place? Does anybody know? Or does Green Rock still do an green audit of businesses to help?
They still do waste audits for companies if they want them. We work with their employees to do it, but that's waste. I don't.
Green, not everything, right? Okay, just wait. Yeah, all right. Okay.
Any more?
Thank you.
No?
Yeah, and then just come across.
Lady.
Quick question, this may be your division, if not, you can maybe tell me who this speak with.
Elect it, yeah, go on.
Cars, the entire cars being wasted and left on the roadsides and parts of bicycles as well. I have a neighbor who seems to have a collection. What is the process? I'm sure there's some kind of reusable parts there. What is happening? Who do you contact? How do you dispose of a car?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Mr. Charles Parks.
That's good for it.
Okay.
Lady at CPD that deals with abandoned vehicles. I think her name is Michelle.
But they do come to us end of life vehicle. That's all the stuff that ends up at the airport. You go on to the airport at the moment, we've got about 2,000 of them stacked up on top of each other. So we can either put them in the sea or we can put a scrap metal program together. Yes, young man.
I think I was next, so please go.
There's been several buildings that have been coming down. Where does all that?
They're asbestos, yeah.
If asbestos will get hopefully segregated and we'll send that away to the US. But if it's building and construction waste, it comes to the airport. And again, that's another material that we need to have a look at because you can crush that stuff and you can segregate that stuff. And instead of shipping in virgin materials, we could be reusing all of that type of stuff. But again, we've not got the equipment or the facilities or the space at the airport at the moment to receive it, segregate it and process it.
The gentleman up top, did you have a question? Yeah.
Regarding fog waste, fats, oil, and grease from restaurants and kitchens, how's that collected and handled?
The majority of it that is segregated is brought to us directly at Tynes Bay, and that is incinerated at the moment. But I didn't mention fog soils and greases because there's so many things that we're working on. I was just trying to keep the higher level stuff. But those are conversations that we are having at the moment with regards to what we're better doing. I get approached all the time about cooking oil. I think people see a real opportunity with it. And I think it's just somebody who's going to stitch it together in the best way. I was just having conversations earlier this week about cooking oil with certain people in the room already. So it is a topic on everybody's lips. Well, not everybody's lips, it makes it sound popular, but there are people that are interested in it, I'll put it that way.
Mr. Mellor can speak to it.
Under the Public Health Act, Fats, Oil and Grease Removal 2017, every restaurant has to have grease trap. And all the grease by law, it has to be cleaned at least monthly. And the corporate, this is in the city, but all restaurants have to have grease traps, even if you wash a spoon. So yeah, I was working in New York at the EPA, and they would show me how they do it. So different places use different methods and different calculations to size a grease trap or whatever, right? So every restaurant in the city has to have a grease trap.
Where does that grease go?
Pardon?
Where does the grease go?
It's collected by the corporation and taken to Tyne Bay.
That's bad.
I don't know if it's put it into the top hopper, and then things burn more efficiently, I guess. This is
In Dockyard, John collects it from all the restaurants and we use it for firing the kiln. So all the Dockyard waste oil is collected and we've been using it for about 20 years.
Grease is in the city to Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 6 to 8. The corporation companies or trucks go around and pick up all the containers usually.
That's my job here.
The corporation is the biggest generator of waste cooking oil on the island. The corporation is the biggest generator. If you look at the numbers coming into Tynes Bay.
Yeah.
So yes, there you go.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, hopefully this is easy. You ready? Bring this up. You mentioned, I'm just joking. You mentioned niche businesses and the potential of food waste coming to Marsh Valley. How ready is Marsh Valley to receive that waste, and what would be needed to be done to help them? Do they need more people? Is it the business that would provide those people?
Not really ready at all, to be fair.
Okay.
I think our compost solutions for agriculture and horticulture will come first. I think we was having conversations about food waste this morning already. I think it's a lot trickier at the situation.
When someone came to you with a good business plan?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I'm not leaving. I'm with somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Asking for.
To be honest with you, a million miles away.
Okay, fair enough.
Question at the top, been waiting a long time.
Go on, buddy.
Maybe on the message as well, like, you talk about, you mentioned earlier that urgent, the course of push opportunities for like blue economy. I think
What's blue economy?
What's blue economy?
Ocean.
So I was wondering, from the government standpoint, is there any opportunity?
I don't know is the honest answer, but what I would always encourage is the conversation. We don't know about it, we don't know you. So if you've got any ideas, like I was saying on the slide earlier, then we need to have a conversation about it. All the conversations, we need to have 1,000 conversations, and how they all stitch themselves together. We'll only progress once we start having the conversation. So if you've got ideas and you've got thoughts about it, then please get in touch.
We have another question right here. Oh, sorry, Robbie, then this gentleman.
Robbie.
To follow up from what Roger said, and the question about fog is, the island of Maui has a really efficient, cost-effective, profitable biodiesel plant. And the scaling might work here, but that's an investment opportunity. We do all the work of getting everything to one place and we burn it, that's fine. But is there an add-on that could be invested in to give us that capacity to use a useful fuel?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, coming down in priority order. Jessica?
Wanted to introduce myself. I'm from Hutchison, and we collect the majority of the commercial waste outside of Corporation of Hamilton. And we also collect, I would believe, to be the second largest producer of the waste cooking oil, the generators outside of the corporation we collect. So if anyone in here is interested or has ideas in how to dispose of waste that we already have access to that we're collecting every day, we are very much interested in working with other people on ways that we can reduce the amount that needs to be disposed of at government facilities, if that takes a burden off, and recycle. So please reach out to us. My email is jessica@atchison.pm.
And in touching on your biodiesel, Jessica and Atchison's used to run biodiesel here, used to run their fleet on it.
We had a biodiesel facility, we're fully operational. But I'm happy to talk with anyone if they want to reach out.
Yeah, we do.
Well, again, I think what we're looking at is that the government not running everything, you know what I mean? And I think it's solutions like what Jessica's probably been involved in that we need to kind of encourage. Let local businesses take it on, you know, and let it go into the private rather than the government trying to run things, because from my experience is that we don't particularly do it very well, you know, so going into private is probably better.
There's Jonathan here. Jonathan?
So I'm wondering, is there a holistic approach across the front end for government itself? So is there somebody looking at how do you reduce the amount of waste that government itself is generating? It must be one of the largest producing waste as an organization on the island. So is there a considered approach to how do you the cost associated with that as well?
Yeah.
What is being wasted and how do we, is somebody looking at that?
Well, that's under our remit, I would argue. So we deal with all the government sections and we have inroads into them for the waste that they are producing. So like with parks, you know, obviously that comes down to marsh folly, anything which is coming out of the quarry, hazardous waste which are being produced, they all flow into our.
But is there a strategy to look at what government is purchasing at the front side of it, to see how we can reduce, maybe refuse?
Yeah, you're talking about really holistic strategic thinking with regards to procurement and linking that back through into disposal. I've not seen too many examples of it. I don't say it's not existing or people are really concerned about it or working towards it. But I'm going to try and deflect it by saying I've only been here for 18 months. So I don't know everything, if you know what I mean, as to what's going on. So sorry I couldn't answer that in a bit more detail.
Just curious, my question is about the fact that recycling is not mandatory in Bermuda.
Yes.
Is that something that you're able to influence or?
I had a whole spiel about mandatory recycling. Because I thought your trash girl was going to ask me.
I know. I thought it was too hard.
It probably was. But what I would say is that it should be. And again, we're getting back into what legislation that we should have on the island, and that definitely should be up there. And it should be telling us what exactly is mandated from a government perspective, and you know what performance targets for all those materials are. You see it in other countries; it should be here.
Yeah, just closing out, I got this information from Best about this.
Oh, yeah.
Is there someone in the room that can compile a list of emails regarding, like Jessica spoke about access?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
I didn't quite hear where he's from, but I would love to have the emails. And the other gentleman that talked about job opportunities, the email to who to contact and what division.
No, it's a very good idea. Yeah, and I don't know whether you could help.
We have a list that's going around, right?
No, but she means specifically to those those issues, not just who are here.
Environmental areas, a list of their emails.
Well, they could use Best as a hub.
That's the best.
For example, Jessica, yes, if you pass your information through the Best, we could compile a list of, would that be feasible? I'm not saying you do it, but I know there was only one part-timer at Best, and that's Kim, and she does a brilliant job. So we've got to be careful we don't overload. Somebody at Best could help.
Yeah, I can help. I'm in IT.
Yeah, okay.
I'm happy to even just put a group chat in my phone or add numbers, and then everyone can put their name in. If people want to stay in touch on this type of conversation.
Goodness for youth.
We get together after that. Just want to talk about it.
Like a good plan.
Composting talk, have you ever talked to BEDC? Because it should be a business opportunity that.
Who's that?
Bermuda Economic Development, so they fund businesses. Just perfect. Selling that.
All right, but by the time we've spoken to agriculture and we've spoken to, then obviously we can throw them into the mix as well. I think that conversation about compost is massive. You know, really is. It's huge. And like I was saying to the gentleman up there, it's going to take 1,000 conversations with 1,000 different people to try and piece it together. All right, any more?
If you haven't signed up, there are 2 clipboards, I hope, going around. Please sign up so we have your emails, so that we can be in touch. Yeah. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you to Mark for his time, presentation.